Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.
Natural selection rendered evolution scientifically intelligible. It was this more than anything else which convinced professional biologists like Sir Joseph Hooker, T.H. Huxley and Ernst Haeckel. Nevertheless, it is probable that the hearing rather early in life such views maintained and praised may have favored my upholding them under a different form and my Origin of Species. This preservation of favorable individual differences and variations, and the destruction of those which are injurious, I have called natural selection, or the survival of the fittest. Man in his arrogance thinks himself a great work, worthy of the interposition of a deity, more humble, and I believe truer, to consider him created from animals. Sexual selection acts in a less rigorous manner than natural selection. The latter produces its effects by the life or death at all ages of the more or less successful individuals. I cannot persuade myself that a beneficent and omnipotent God would have designedly created parasitic wasps with the express intention of their feeding within the living bodies of caterpillars. What an extraordinary thing it is! Mr. Darwin seems to spend hours in cracking a horsewhip in his room, for I often hear the crack when I pass under his windows. I have deeply regretted that I did not proceed far enough at least to understand something of the great leading principles of mathematics, for men thus endowed seem to have an extra sense. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. It is those who know little, and not those who know much, who so positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science. False facts are highly injurious to the progress of science, for they often endure long but false views, if supported by some evidence, do little harm, for everyone takes a salutary pleasure in proving their falseness. I have steadily endeavored to keep my mind free so as to give up any hypothesis, however much beloved, and I cannot resist forming one on every subject, as soon as facts are shown to be opposed to it. When I view all beings not as special creations, but as the lineal descendants of some few beings which lived long before the first bed of the Cambrian system was deposited, they seem to me to become ennobled. In regard to the amount of difference between the races, we must make some allowance for our nice powers of discrimination gained by a long habit of observing ourselves. I have stated that in the 13 species of ground finches, a nearly perfect gradation may be traced, from a beak extraordinarily thick, to one so fine, that it may be compared to that of the warbler. It is necessary to look forward to a harvest, however distant that may be, when some fruit will be reaped, some good effected. A grain in the balance will determine which individual shall live and which shall die, which variety or species shall increase in number, and which shall decrease, or finally become extinct. But then arises the doubt, can the mind of man, which has, as I fully believe, been developed from a mind as low as that possessed by the lowest animal, be trusted when it draws such grand conclusions? The loss of those tastes, for poetry and music, is a loss of happiness, and may possibly be injurious to the intellect, and more probably to the moral character, by enfeebling the emotional part of our nature. Freedom of thought is best promoted by the gradual illumination of men's minds which follows from the advance of science. Nothing is easier than to admit in words the truth of the universal struggle for life, or more difficult, at least I have found it so, than constantly to bear this conclusion in mind. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate, and replace the savage races throughout the world. We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man with all his noble quality as a broken bar still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin. Besides love and sympathy, animals exhibit other qualities connected with the social instincts which in us would be called moral. One general law, leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely, multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. Man selects only for his own good, nature only for that of the being which she tends. What a book a devil's chaplain might write on the clumsy, wasteful, blundering, low, and horribly cruel work of nature. There was grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that, whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been, and are being, evolved. Physiological experiment on animals is justifiable for real investigation, but not for mere damnable and detestable curiosity. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation, but the history of science shows that fortunately this power does not long endure.
Thank you for watching.